The first time I saw him again, he was laughing. Laughing as if the wreckage he left behind had never existed. It was a late November afternoon in Seattle. The sky bruised with rain clouds, the kind that threatened to burst any second. My hands were cold inside my jacket pockets, my breath visible in the air. But the real frost was sitting somewhere deep in my chest. For years since the day Mason walked out on me without so much as an explanation, and now here he was, standing on the sidewalk across the street, throwing his head back in a way that used to make my heart stutter. He was with someone. Not just someone with her. The Omega who'd been the final crack in whatever fragile thing we'd built. I should have turned away. I should have walked faster, pretended I didn't see him. Instead, I froze, like I always did when the past had the audacity to show its face. That was when a deep voice, warm and steady, came from behind me. "You don't have to stand here and watch that." I turned and found myself looking up into the eyes of a man I'd only met once before, years ago at a barbecue Mason had dragged me to. His older brother, Ethan. He was broader now, his shoulders carrying the kind of strength that made people step aside on the sidewalk. There was something different in his gaze, too, less guarded, more knowing. "Ethan?" I breathed before I could stop myself. He glanced across the street, his jaw tightening when he saw Mason. Guess he hasn't changed much. A rush of old anger swirled in my stomach, mixing with the strange comfort of Ethan's presence. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't offer pity. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low. "Come on, let's get out of here." I should have said no. I should have told him I didn't need saving. But the truth was, in that moment I did. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted it to be him. We ended up in a quiet coffee shop 2 blocks away, the kind with mismatched mugs and soft jazz playing in the background. I wrapped my hands around the warmth of my cup, trying to thaw myself from the inside out. "Why are you here?" I asked finally, my voice sharper than I meant. Ethan leaned back, his eyes never leaving mine. "My company moved me back to Seattle last month." And he hesitated, then leaned forward again. "I saw you, Noah. I saw how you looked at him. You deserve better than standing on a street corner remembering the worst day of your life." I bit my lip. "You don't even know what happened." "I know enough," he said simply. "And I know my brother. He doesn't get to hurt you again." Something in his tone made my pulse jump. This wasn't just a casual warning. It was a promise. But promises were dangerous. I'd learned that the hard way. The days that followed should have been uneventful. But they weren't. Ethan started showing up not in an intrusive way, but in those quiet, perfectly timed moments. At the grocery store when I was struggling to reach the top shelf. At the bus stop when the rain came down too hard. Once, even outside the library where I worked, leaning against his truck like it was the most natural thing in the world. And every time, he'd say the same thing with his eyes, even if his mouth didn't move. "I'm here." It was confusing, infuriating, comforting. The real problem came a week later, when Mason walked back into my life as if nothing had happened. He came to the library, all charming smiles and familiar cologne. "Noah," he said, as if my name was some magic spell that could erase the years. "We should talk." My stomach twisted. "Talk about what? How you left? Or how you didn't even have the guts to?" "Look, I made mistakes," he interrupted, lowering his voice. "But I've changed. I want to make things right." Before I could answer, another shadow fell over the counter. Ethan. He didn't even look at Mason. His eyes were on me, steady, grounding. "You okay?" I nodded, though my pulse was racing. Mason straightened, his smirk faltering. "Ethan, this is between me and Noah." "Not anymore," Ethan said, his voice quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. Then he reached over the counter, not roughly, not possessively, but in a way that left no doubt, and took my hand. My breath caught. Mason's eyes narrowed. "You've got to be kidding me." But Ethan didn't look away from me. "You don't owe him anything, Noah. Not your time, not your forgiveness. And definitely not your heart." It was the first time in 4 years I felt something stronger than heartbreak. Felt like safety. Seattle's winter nights have a way of making everything sharper: the air, the lights, even the things you wish you could forget. Mason had been showing up more often, his attempts to worm back into my life growing bolder, his voice dripping with the same charm that once made me believe he'd never leave. But Ethan was always there, sometimes in the periphery, sometimes right beside me. And every time, his presence made Mason's words lose their weight. One night, it escalated. I was locking up the library when I felt someone behind me. Mason. His eyes were dark, his smile gone. "You think you're too good for me now?" I tightened my grip on my keys. "I think I'm done with you." "You've been talking to Ethan," he said, his voice low and sharp. "You think he's better?" "He's not. He's—" The words cut off when Ethan stepped out of the shadows. He didn't raise his voice, didn't posture. "Walk away, Mason." For a moment I thought Mason might push it, but something in Ethan's stance, calm, solid, immovable, made him curse under his breath and turn on his heel. When the sound of his footsteps faded, Ethan looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "You're shaking." I hadn't realized I was until he said it. "I'm fine, Elide." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth even through the cold. "You don't have to be fine all the time, Noah." And then he did something I wasn't prepared for. He reached up, brushing a tear from my cheek with the gentlest touch, his thumb lingering just long enough to make my chest ache. "You've been holding yourself together for so long. Let someone hold you for a change." The dam I'd been building for years cracked. I let him pull me into his arms. It wasn't like the way Mason used to hold me, desperate, claiming. Ethan's hold was steady, certain, like he was promising me I could stand here as long as I needed and nothing would pull me away. Weeks passed, and Mason eventually stopped showing up. The tension that had wrapped itself around my life began to loosen, replaced by moments I didn't know I'd been missing: shared breakfasts, quiet walks, conversations that dug deeper than the surface. One evening, we were sitting in his truck by the waterfront, watching the lights ripple across the dark water. I turned to him, the question that had been burning in me finally slipping out. "Why me, Ethan? Why now?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached over, his hand finding mine with that same calm certainty he'd shown from the beginning. "Because I saw you when you thought no one did. And I knew if I ever got the chance, I wasn't going to waste it." The truth of it hit me harder than I expected. He'd been there watching from the edges, waiting for the right moment. Not to rescue me, but to be the place I could land when I was ready. I smiled then, for the first time without that old ache pressing against it. "You're nothing like him." "Good," he said softly. "I don't want to be." Spring came early that year. On the first warm afternoon, Ethan and I ended up walking through the park, the air sweet with blooming cherry trees. He stopped beneath one, turning to face me fully. "Noah," he said, and my heart stuttered the way it used to, not from fear, but from something I was finally ready to name. "Yes." He hesitated, then smiled in that quiet, grounding way of his. "I'm not asking for forever today. Just let me keep holding your hand." And for once, I didn't need to think about the answer. I stepped closer, threading my fingers through his, feeling the warmth of his palm against mine. "Don't let go." He didn't. And as the petals fell around us, I realized this was what safety felt like: not walls to keep the world out, but a hand that held you steady as you stepped into it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.